The village of Apara, nestled in the heart of Yoruba land, was known for its rich culture and powerful dynasty. But within the palace of Oba Adegbite, a dark cloud lingered. His last son, Adégún, was the shame of the royal family. Unlike his brothers, who were warriors and scholars, Adégún was seen as weak, rebellious, and unworthy of the crown. His mother, Olori Morohanfila, had passed away mysteriously after his birth, and many whispered that he was cursed. Despised by his father and scorned by his siblings, Adégún grew up as an outcast in his own home. The servants mocked him, the chiefs ignored him, and the villagers saw him as a disgrace to the throne. His elder brother, Prince Aditoy, was the pride of the kingdom, a fearless warrior expected to inherit the throne. But destiny, unpredictable as the wind, had other plans. One fateful evening, an ancient priestess, Aya Agbe, arrived at the palace. She was feared and respected, her words never to be taken lightly. She requested an audience with Oba Adegbite, claiming she had seen a vision. The king, intrigued but skeptical, granted her request. "The one you despise will rise above all," she proclaimed. "The stone rejected by the builders shall become the cornerstone. When the moon turns red, a great storm will come, and only the outcast shall save the throne." Laughter erupted in the palace. Prince Aditoy sneered, the chiefs dismissed her words, and the king waved her away. But Adégún, standing in the shadows, felt a shiver run down his soul. Adégún had grown used to insults, but the prophecy of Aya Agbe changed everything. His brothers, threatened by her words, convinced the king that Adégún was a danger to the throne. "He is the storm the priestess spoke of," Aditoy declared. "We must rid the kingdom of his bad omen before disaster strikes." That very night, palace guards stormed Adégún's chambers, dragging him out like a common criminal. "By order of the king, you are banished from Apara," the chief guard bellowed. Adégún fought, but he was no match for their strength. With nothing but a torn tunic and bruises, he was cast into the wilderness, alone and forsaken. The deep forest of Iginol was feared by all. It was said to be cursed, a place where spirits roamed and men vanished without a trace. Adégún stumbled through the thick undergrowth, hungry and exhausted. His body ached, and his spirit was crushed. As he collapsed near a riverbank, he heard a rustling behind him. His heart pounded. Could it be a wild beast? Or the ghosts of the forest? With his last ounce of strength, he turned, and saw an old man with piercing eyes staring at him. "You are not meant to die here," the man said. "Your journey has just begun." The old man introduced himself as Baba Oak, a former warrior who had once fought for Apara before being betrayed and exiled. He had spent years in the wilderness, mastering the secrets of survival. "The God sent you to me," he said. "They have a plan for you, but you must be ready." For the next 7 years, Adégún trained under Baba Oak. He learned to fight, to strategize, and to harness his inner strength. The weak prince who had once been ridiculed was no more. In his place stood a fierce warrior, a man forged in pain and sharpened by betrayal. Back in Apara, disaster struck. A rival kingdom, Iluko, launched a surprise attack. Prince Aditoy, despite his arrogance, was no match for their cunning warriors. He was captured, and the enemy laid siege to the palace. The people of Apara, once proud and mighty, were now desperate and leaderless. Oba Adegbite, now an old and weary man, realized his mistake too late. "If only I had not cast him away," he murmured. But the gods had already set destiny in motion. News of Apara's downfall reached Adégún through a traveling merchant. He clenched his fists. The kingdom that had abandoned him now needed a savior. The irony was not lost on him. Baba Oak placed a hand on his shoulder. "This is your moment," he said. "You must reclaim what is yours." With a band of outcasts, warriors, and exiles, Adégún set out for the kingdom that had rejected him. He was no longer the weak, disgraced prince they had thrown away. He was a storm, and he was coming home. As Adégún and his warriors approached the gates of Apara, they were met with resistance. The remaining palace guards, still loyal to Prince Aditoy, refused to let him in. "You have no place here," they spat. "Leave before we cut you down." But Adégún did not come to beg. He raised his sword. "Then you will die protecting a kingdom that is already lost," he said. His warriors charged, and in a swift, brutal battle, the gates of Apara fell. The outcast had returned. Adégún stormed into the palace, cutting down enemies as he went. He found his father, Oba Adegbite, in the royal chamber, frail and broken. The old king looked at him with weary eyes. "You have returned," he whispered. Adégún knelt before him, the anger in his heart warring with the love he once had for his father. "Yes, Baba," he said. "But not as your son. As the savior of this land." The king coughed, blood staining his lips. With his dying breath, he whispered, "Then take the throne, and do what I could not." With his father's passing, Adégún's path was clear. But before he could claim the throne, he had unfinished business. Prince Aditoy was still alive, held captive by the enemy. No true king lets his brother rot in the hands of his foes, Baba Ok reminded him. And so, with his warriors at his side, Adégún rode to Eluko, ready to confront the ghosts of his past and rewrite his destiny. The black sheep of the family was about to become king, but the journey was far from over. The journey to Eluko was treacherous. Adégún and his warriors had to navigate through dense forests, cross treacherous rivers, and evade enemy patrols. Baba Ok, ever the strategist, led them through secret paths known only to outcasts and exiles. When they arrived at Eluko's gates, Adégún knew this battle would define his rule. The enemy held his brother, the same brother who had once cast him out. But he was not here for revenge, he was here for justice. "Tonight we take back what belongs to us," he declared. The warriors roared in agreement. Under the cover of darkness, Adégún and his warriors infiltrated the fortress. They moved like shadows, taking out guards silently. But when they reached the dungeons, they found Prince Aditoy, battered but alive. "You came for me?" he asked weakly, his pride shattered. Before Adégún could respond, the enemy general arrived, a towering warrior named Ogunlokan, known for his ruthlessness. "If you want him, fight me," he challenged. Adégún, without hesitation, stepped forward. "Let's finish this." The clash of steel echoed in the fortress as the two warriors fought for the fate of a kingdom. Just as Adégún began to feel the weight of peace settling upon the kingdom, a disturbing message arrived. A village near the northern border had been raided, and the attackers bore the markings of the Oyo warriors. But Oyo was supposed to be an ally. When the captured warrior was brought before him, Adégún's blood ran cold. "Who sent you?" he demanded. The warrior smirked. "Your greatest enemy," he whispered. And then, before anyone could stop him, he bit into a hidden poison, foaming at the mouth as he fell dead. Troubled by the attack, Adégún summoned his council. "Oyo would not break our alliance without reason," he said. "Someone is manipulating them." Baba Ok nodded gravely. "The enemy is within." That night, Adégún had a dream, one that felt too real to be mere imagination. A faceless figure stood in the palace hall, whispering,
"The throne is not yours."
When he awoke, he found strange symbols carved into his chamber walls. Someone was trying to drive him to madness. Queen Monarchy had been a loyal wife, standing by Adégún through every battle. But she carried a secret she could not reveal. One night, she met with a cloaked figure in the dark corridors of the palace. "You promised me he would not sit on the throne for long," she hissed. The figure chuckled. "Patience, my queen. His downfall is near." Monarchy clenched her fists. She had made a deal long ago, one that could destroy everything if exposed. But could she truly go through with it? Adégún noticed Monarch's growing distance. She was once his strength, but now she seemed cold, lost in thought. One evening, as he returned from a war meeting, he found her staring at him strangely. "Do you trust me?" she asked. "With my life," he answered without hesitation. But he did not see the tears in her eyes as she turned away. That night, she sent a secret message to the enemies of Apara. "The time has come," she wrote. "Strike when the moon is full." The palace guards were fast asleep when the assassins slipped in. Their mission was clear: kill the king in his sleep. But just as the blade was about to pierce Adégún's chest, he awoke. Years of battle had sharpened his instincts. A fierce fight erupted in the chamber. Blood splattered the walls as Adégún cut down one assassin after another. But as he turned to strike the last one, the hood fell away, revealing a familiar face, Monarchy. His heart shattered. Monarchy dropped her dagger, trembling. "You were never meant to be king," she whispered. "I made a pact before you returned." Tears filled Adégún's eyes. "Why?" he asked. "Because they promised me power," she admitted. "But now I see, they only used me." Guards rushed in and restrained her. The Queen of Apara, once loved, had become the greatest traitor of all. The council demanded Monarch's execution. "She tried to kill you," Baba Ok reminded him. "The law is clear." But Adégún hesitated. This was the woman he had once loved. In the end, he made his decision. "Banish her," he declared. "Let her live with the consequences of her betrayal." The people gasped, but none dared to question the king. Monarchy was stripped of her title and cast out into the wild. Though the queen's betrayal had been exposed, the real enemy remained hidden. The ones who had manipulated her were still in the shadows. And they were not done with Adégún yet. Spies reported that an army was gathering beyond the eastern hills. The traitors had found a new champion, one with a blood claim to the throne. Adégún's greatest battle was yet to come. The leader of the enemy forces finally revealed himself. As he marched toward Apara with thousands of warriors, his identity sent shockwaves through the kingdom. It was Prince Ogunlaki, the long-lost descendant of the royal bloodline. "I have returned to claim what is mine," he declared. The people murmured in fear. Could this be the true heir? Had Adégún been an impostor all along? Doubt began to spread like poison. Some chiefs secretly sided with Ogunlaki, believing he had a stronger claim. Adégún felt the kingdom slipping through his fingers. "The people do not know who to trust," Baba Ok warned. "You must remind them why you are king." Determined to prove his right, Adégún challenged Ogunlaki to a sacred duel. "Let the gods decide," he proclaimed. The people gasped. If he lost, his reign would end. If he won, his enemies would be silenced forever. On the sacred grounds of Olojumere's shrine, the two warriors faced each other. The air was thick with tension. This was not just a fight, it was the will of the gods at play. Blades clashed, blood spilled, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. Ogunlaki was strong, but Adégún had faced greater trials. In the final moment, he found an opening and struck. The challenger fell, his claim shattered. With Ogunlaki dead, the rebel forces collapsed. Those who had betrayed Adégún begged for mercy, but his patience had run out. "Justice will be swift," he declared. The ringleaders were executed, and the remaining conspirators were exiled. The kingdom had suffered too much. Now, it was time to rebuild. Peace returned to Apara, but Adégún had changed. He was no longer the outcast who had fought for acceptance. He was now a king hardened by war and betrayal. Baba Ok saw the change. "You carry too much pain," he said. But Adégún simply nodded. "A king must bear the burdens of his people," he replied. And so, he ruled with strength, but his heart remained guarded. Years passed, and Apara flourished. Trade routes expanded, the people thrived, and peace endured. Adégún had become a legend, the king who had defied fate. But in the silence of the night, he often wondered, had he truly won? Or had he simply survived? Just as he thought his enemies were gone, a final dagger struck. Baba Oak, his most trusted advisor, was found dead in his chambers. The kingdom was in mourning. A note was left beside the body. The throne will never be safe. Adégún clenched his fists. Even in peace, the shadows lingered. Determined to end the cycle of betrayal, Adégún declared war on the last remnants of the secret conspirators. Let there be no more enemies, he vowed. With fire and steel, he crushed the final opposition. The kingdom would never be threatened again. But at what cost? Adégún had won every battle, defeated every foe. But in his palace, he sat alone. The cost of the throne had been too high. As he looked upon the land he had fought for, he whispered, was it all worth it? When Adégún died, he was remembered as the greatest king Apara had ever known. Songs were sung of his trials, his victories, and his sacrifices. And so, the black sheep of the family had become a legend. A king. But above all, a man who had defied fate itself.